Right. Welcome. Thank you for attending today, the Making Mobile Trip Planning Work for You and Your Clients. My name is Carrie Diamond, and I am with the National Aging and Disability Transportation Center. We're pleased to co-host this webinar today with the National Rural Transit Assistance Program. Go ahead, Marcy. So just a few logistics. If you could go back one slide, please. There we go. This session is being recorded. All of the materials, including the recording, will be put on both the NADTC and the National RTAP websites. Closed captioning is available. You can turn that on and off using the CC button. And in the chat will be the link for the streaming text if you prefer to follow along that way. We ask that if you have questions today, you enter those in the Q&A box instead of the chat. The chat scrolls and it makes it difficult to pull out those questions. So you can use chat if you're having difficulties or you need to talk to one of the presenters. But otherwise, if you could enter the questions into the chat, questions into the Q&A box, that would be appreciated. All participants are muted. You will stay muted. However, if you have a question that you haven't put in the Q&A box or you would like to make a comment, you can raise your hand and then you can be unmuted. So if you could go to the next slide, we'll just show you to raise your hand. You go to the reactions at the bottom of the screen and then choose the raise hand option. Go ahead and next slide. So the National Aging and Disability Transportation Center is a federally funded technical assistance center in partnership with Easter Seals and the N4A, the Area Agency on Aging Association. And our mission is to promote the availability of accessible transportation options for older adults, people with disabilities, their caregivers, and their communities. The funding source we primarily focused on is Section 5310, Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Older Adults. We have several objectives. One is to provide person-centered technical assistance and information, to offer training such as a webinar like today, do communication and outreach. We have a newsletter that you can sign up to receive information from us, as well as blogs and other things that are put on our website. We work a lot in coordination and partnership, like the partnership today with National RTAP. And we also provide investments in community solutions that are smaller grants to communities to help with planning or implementation of projects. We are just finishing our 2020 project, so stay tuned for the next opportunity. So I'm very excited today to introduce Marcy and Amelia. We just are so pleased to partner on this opportunity to show you some of these tools that are publicly available and considerations for populations like older adults who don't use a lot of technology and people with disabilities. So if you say, but my system's not on here, Marcy has a great tool she's going to talk about near the end and walk you through that. So Marcy Jaffe is a consultant and works with National RTAP. And then we're pleased to have Amelia Bostic, who is an advocate for public transit and a former mobility manager in North Carolina. Take it away, Marcy.
Thank you, Carrie. National Rural Transit Assistance Program offers no-cost support for agencies funded through the 5311 program. All of our training materials are free and support tribal transit, rural communities, primarily under 50,000 in population. We are guided by a review board and have State Department of Transportation, tribal transit and rural transit partners on that board who guide us. We welcome your feedback and input. We have offices in both Massachusetts and Washington, DC. Visit our website. Now I'm going to pass this baton to Amelia, who will guide us through today's training. Amelia?
Well, welcome everyone. I am so glad you're here. We're going to dive right in and start going over an overview of our agenda. So what we're going to talk about today is what is a trip planner and a digital trip planner, how to plan a trip through a digital trip planner, teaching trip planning as an overview, as well as what a digital trip planner adds to that. And then Marcy's going to finish up with how the transit data is added to a digital trip planner. So let's start. What is a trip planner? Well, before the internet, we had to do everything by hand. It was the pen and paper method with a printed map. We stretched it out. We showed it to our ridership. We gave them detailed instructions. But what this did for them, we could get them from A to B, but it didn't get them necessarily to answer the question of where else can I go? They couldn't see all the options they had, and the data wasn't standardized across agencies. An example of that data comes straight from the former agency I was with, Greenway Public Transportation. We launched 2 new flex routes in 2018. What you're looking at is a time point table, and you have a map in front of you that we used for our printed materials, as well as a Google Maps trip showing the same information. So prior to our digital trip planner, we would show them this information, but information was limited and we couldn't give them good estimates for the times they needed to be unless they were at a time point stop. Before getting on GTFS, it was very common for a rider to download a PDF off a website. And you can see on the left hand of the screen, what you're looking at is a PDF that has been a screenshot. This is going to be very hard to get the information off of for anyone. Even on our screen, it's impossibly tiny. You have to scroll back and forth. But with a digital trip planner, you actually have the option to tailor that same information to you and your trip every single time without having to write down information about the trip individually. A digital trip planner also has a fantastic resource of consolidating data. So I mentioned earlier that this is ability for us to all use a universal language. So what you're looking at is a trip that utilizes 3 different transit agencies' information. All of that information was pulled from these time point maps, puts it in one place, and makes it easy to access for the rider to see, okay, these are the full steps without having to call every single agency. This is another example of the same information, but on Apple Maps. Again, all of this comes from a GTFS feed. So what is GTFS? Everybody, I feel like, gets frustrated with acronyms, but it's a general transit feed specification. So you have 3 different types. For us, this is our universal language. This is our place to put all the same route information for any transit agency to be available for anyone all over the world. Your 3 types are static, real time, and flex. Static is your information that comes from your time points. You already have that information available. Real-time information is often offered through an agency that allows the ability to track the buses. If you look on this map, this is a Google Maps example that has real-time information, and it's pointing that the bus is running a minute early. That's just a flag for more information for your rider. And then Flex, which is a forthcoming stop, is a great way to show stops that maybe not necessarily listed, but are part of on-demand services. So let's dive into that a little bit more here in a moment. Another great asset of our digital trip planners is the ability to change the trip planner immediately into another language. So we don't have to translate a map into 70+ languages, which helps us with our Title VI mandates. So let's talk about that flex workaround or on-demand services. A lot of us have on-demand services. Greenway served 4 counties and 3 out of the 4 had only on-demand services. This is a great way to plug in the information and say, hey, we have a route that exists here. You just have to call us and let us know you want to ride. So you're listed on Google Maps. People can see the times that you're normally there, but they also can see your contact information to give a call and join. So GTFS, our nice, beautiful, standardized, universal language, it feeds into a multitude of apps. And this is an example pulled from the TriMet website of different apps that you can use that all utilize GTFS data, that transit feed that is universal for all of us, hosted by Google. One thing I want to highlight is the Sense navigation. So what's fantastic about that, that is an app that is used for wayfinding for people who are visually impaired. So it's another offering that you have right there at your fingertips that you can give to your rider. So what we're going to do now is build a little bit of confidence for those of you that may or may not have used Google Transit before. And we're going to go into a live demo so to show that anyone at any time can travel train via a Zoom meeting. All of these slides, we have included them as steps within the deck. So you'll have full ability to download that and read through them later as a toolkit for your travel training. But we're going to do this live. So I'm going to travel train our expert Marcy on a trip and walk her through the steps. The first step that we have is we're going to go to Google Maps. That is the most familiar, I feel, with everyone. We're going to type in google.com/maps and it brings us here. One thing I want to mention is that kind of tagged her where she's at. And that's going to be common for anyone. Your phone is going to bring up the information of where your last GPS ping was, whether you're on an app on your phone or on your desktop. So we're going to take a look at the Get Directions icon here. It's a blue sign. And if you would click that for us, Marcy. Most of us are familiar with the Google driving directions. We're going to start off there and just type in our location cities, which makes it so much easier now than what we used to. And we can see that we have the options to just type in a city to locate directions. So for today's trip, Marcy told me that she wants to go from Aberdeen to Nia Bay. And what she is going to do, she doesn't want to drive this trip. She's got a book she wants to read. So we're going to take a look at the trip options. If she were to drive, this is 3 hours and 14 minutes. You can see the mileage that it's going to take, but you have the options as well. But we're here for transit. So let's go to the transit button. The icon that looks like a bus is right here at the top. And we've selected that. But we also have the icons for walking, cycling, and possible flights. As we go into this, we're going to take a look at our trip that Google Maps has offered us on transit from Aberdeen to Nia Bay. We can, at this point, look at the travel time. We can swap our start and end if we wanted to, if we're on our way back. We can also take a look at when we want to arrive there or depart by. So this is an option where you can say, I need to depart at a certain time. I need to arrive at a certain time by using these drop-down selections. All right, the next thing I want to show is that we can also select our trips to show accessibility options. It automatically selects the best route according to Google, which is usually the fastest and least amount of transfers combined. But we have other options. So if we want to look and say, do we want a trip that has fewer transfers, less walking, or do we want a trip that we can confirm wheelchair accessibility? For today's class, we're going to choose the wheelchair accessible option. And this pulls up our trip. Now, say Marcy was an individual that spoke English as a second language, and I want to travel train Marcy in a different language. So we've got our trip selected, but if we need to go back, we can. We're going to go into menu here. Yeah. Scroll down to the language option. And as I mentioned before, now we have 70+ different languages that we can utilize to teach the same trip in her native language. All right, we're going to go into another option that we have, and we're going to look at a bus stop or departures from a bus stop. This is an interesting thing because I have riders that, as I was learning Google Transit, even though I put it on the web, I still found and saw that I learned a lot from my ridership as I taught them. We pulled it up, and there's a part of this that shows all the information of the bus stop. You can look at a picture, you can see the exact address, popular times, but most importantly for us, you can see the departure board. So we're going to pull that up. Many riders would screenshot this so that they could have the routes that were utilized at their common stops. I do want to go over this information because even I found this confusing and still do at times. So let's go over what we're looking at. So on the left, we see our individual routes with their route identifier color. And then we see the name in that identifier color. The information that you see next to them is the direction they are headed. So the next stop's name, essentially. And then, of course, the time when the bus stop is there. I want to make sure we cleared that specifically, because if we are want to take route 15 or route 17, if you could see, there's route 17 listed 3 times, but each in a different direction. This is very information you need to be clear when you're travel training your ridership. All right, so we've looked at our next departures from the stop. One thing I do want to note is that information can also be utilized by a screen reader. Details. We've selected our route. We know which way we're going. Let's take a look. We're going to click the details button here. And just start from the top. We have a couple different options. We have the time frame it's going to take. We have the routes we're going to need to utilize, the time we need to start, our fare cost, and how much walking we're going to have. We have a schedule explorer. So if I was discussing with Marcy, I want to come visit you, but we don't know exactly the time I get out of work, say 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then we can scroll through this schedule explorer and find the best trip that's going to fit when we want to go. We can use any of the edit tools as we did before and get all of the information tailored to us instantly. All right, the next thing I want to show is the walking steps. Walking on Google Transit is indicated by the blue dots, and you see the little man walking there. Tells you we're going to be walking 7 minutes. The information is directly underneath. It tells us the direction we're going to be heading. Very important for people who are utilizing that wayfinding app to know when to turn. And it'll signal them as well because it pings off their GPS. Next, we're going to scroll down. We're going to see the information of the routes we're going to join. So we are getting on the bus here at the station that is in bold. That is very important. Remember, I said that this gets a little confusing sometimes. Your stops that are getting on and off are going to be in bold. We're going to open up the stop list that we're going to ride on Route 20. In here, we learn we have 18 stops in 14 minutes. Again, for someone visually impaired, this is very important. They're not going to be able to see how many stops they're going, but they can utilize that reader to find exactly where they are. We're going to scroll down, take a look at all of that information. We can see we've got a transfer point right here and the time that we're going to have to wait. And we see our drop-off point. So Marcy, it rains a lot in Washington, doesn't it? Just a little bit. We want to make sure that your location that you're getting dropped off has a great place for you to wait for the bus in case a shower blows through. So how we do that is we've actually pulled up another screen, just so you know, and it's the same information, but if you scroll into the map, you can actually get a satellite view. And right here, we have, again, our bus stop icon. That little blue icon is important because you can also view your departure board from there as well. So we're going to pick up our Pegman and open into Street View so we can take a look around the bus stop where Marcy's going to end her trip. And we can confirm, hey, it's got crosswalks. It's got a nice, safe place to wait for the bus to arrive. And we've got accessibility options. All of this because we can take a look at the bus stop before we actually get there. Now I want to take a exit, and so we get stuck in Google Maps sometimes in Street View. If you want to exit, you go up to the left-hand corner, exit there. Let's go back into our trip, Marcy, as we've gone over where to wait, and we're going to take a look at agency information. So Marcy has successfully made it to Nia Bay. She's pleased with her trip, but oh no, she left her book on the bus that she was reading. So how is she going to get in contact with the agency? Without having to investigate too much, she's got that information right at the end of her trip. She's got her total fare amount, who to call, and also a link to the website. Now, it is important to me that she has the ability to click through that website easily, but in case she needs to report an emergency, we need to have that phone number listed right away. Because as you can tell, if you were to go to a transit website, sometimes we have pop-ups or information, or you have multiple clicks just to obtain the phone number. With this, information's right at our fingertips. All right.
Amelia, I'll just add, sometimes fares, even though fares may have been suspended for a while, could also be found here. And as a travel trainer, we might want to go into the website and just learn about the different fare options, because the $2 is the one-way adult, and the ticket information allows you to learn more or even buy a ticket. Take it away.
And that's really great information, Marcy, because again, we have had situations where, you know, well, maybe we don't want to put information on Google Transit because what if it's wrong? It's not something we can control. You do have a waiver kind of here at the end to remind your ridership that this is for planning purposes. It's not always perfect. And it is important to keep your GTFS feed updated. Holidays, weather, construction projects, all of this can change in a moment. That is easily changeable when you work with your own GTFS feed. So I do hope that you'll investigate that.
Amelia, can I interject? There was a question in the chat. You are demoing for us Google Maps, but Apple Maps works, and those there's other apps that someone could do this on, correct?
Correct, yes. And Apple Maps is very similar. The only difference really is where the buttons are.
No, it's just how they display the information. So there's Transit app, Move It, Yahoo, Bing, all that offer public transit information will use the same data set. We just happen to choose Google because it might be familiar for some. So it's a very good question, Carrie. Thank you.
And are you, either of you, familiar with City Mapper?
Another fabulous trip planner, absolutely. There are probably 40 different fabulous trip planners. We just don't have a chance to explain and review all the amazing features. So as a travel trainer, you will be able to customize with your riders what will work best for them. That link that we had from TriMet gives you City Mapper, Move It, all of them. There's probably 50 different options in there. All good questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I would, to restate again, that all of this uses that universal feed. So one of the reasons why I feel Google Maps is the first place to start, because it's the origination. All right, so we're gonna move into one more thing, but so we're travel training with Marcy, right? And maybe we're not taking this trip today. We have an option up at the top of this trip plan where we can send all of this information directly to her phone. Right here, you can send it as a link to your phone. You can send, you can print it out, excuse me. And then you also have the option to add it as an event.
Or add it to your calendar. Yeah.
Excuse me. All right, so now we're going to jump into trip planning, doing this with other riders and agencies. And again, all of this is listed in slides. We're going to jump from these slides to slide 44. There we are. So how to teach trip planning. In my opinion and experience, we have two major groups. We have our case managers and we have our individual riders. And we're going to go into the importance of that. The starting point before you go on to GTFS of any app for any feed that you're explaining is to remember the things that it can't do. So it is no substitute for reviewing your rules of ridership. You are the face of your company most times when you're out travel training. Use this time to explain to them what to expect from your transit employees to help keep everyone safer. It can't provide the full service area or scope of what you provide. So we want to make sure that we are explaining all of that and providing printed materials with their contact information later. So, back up just a little bit. There we go. When you're planning a travel training, I want to go over the image that you're seeing, and I'm very proud of Aaron Kors, the current mobility manager at Greenway. One of the projects that I helped him plan was the ride along here with the city of Hickory mayor. And what we did is we got a group together and we travel trained this entire group and had a city hall while on board. We did this by keeping the basics in mind: who, what, where, when, and why. You're going to have to apply that to every travel training you're doing, and you need to tailor the experience to your group or individual. So for this group, it was easier for us to all meet at the transit center and board there. If you have a group from the high school, start from the high school. If you are teaching in a classroom setting, you have a lot of different options. One of those is using a screencasting app or projecting this on a projector from your computer, just like Marcy did here. This is a fully accessible way to teach travel training in anywhere you are, even if you're doing it over Zoom. So the advantages of teaching from a digital trip planner. I feel like this is just review, but you've got your accessibility right there at your fingertips. You can travel, you can train remotely. You know, we are in COVID times still, and we need to be careful, but we have the option. We want to train a group of 72 participants. We can do it all from Zoom. If we want to, we can make sure that each rider is traveling at, or they're learning at their own pace. So if you're training them from their own device, they're familiar with it. They know where to go. This is going to be easy for them to say, hold on, let me go back, because they can point to it themselves. They've got it in their hand. And then once you feel that they know what they're doing, you can back out and start a whole new trip and have them utilize that instantly instead of having to pour through different print media. And of course, again, you have the option that once they've travel trained, if they're feeling a little still insecure, send that trip plan directly to their phone, show them how to open the link. That'll help overcome a lot of the technology resistance sometimes we experience when travel training. So building a travel training network, this is one of the things I'm most excited about. The image you're looking at is from a science center teach on board. And it's just a lot of fun. We had our science center come and teach a science lesson to our ridership. But this is another part of outreach. So when you have your GTFS feed available through whatever means that you do, make sure you train your dispatchers first. This is so crucial because all of the ridership that has previously been contacting your agency, they know the phone number, they know who to call, they have a favorite dispatcher. These are going to be the people that touch your ridership the most. So that instantly puts the call volume down if they have these tools in their toolkit. Then your partner agency, who is servicing our ridership the most. Most of the time, I feel like these are going to be listed on our bus maps already as key destinations. So start training them first. Example I have, you'll see on the next slide, a video where we trained our DSS in Burke County. If I train 10 people and then each one of them train 10 people, we have 110 people trained from the one service hour one staff hour that I provided to DSS. So this grows your network exponentially in your outreach. So you are reaching so many more people with that valuable time. And you can also offer these agencies, hey, if you'll take out and record the information, we can give you bus tickets or such, and we'll provide the ride if you're out recording the data, which again, we'll mention how important that is later. But it also keeps a feedback loop coming all the time to what bus stops need where. Ridership would screenshot a bus stop on Google Maps. I can't tell you how many times, and say, hey, cut down this branch, I can't get to my bus stop, or I can't see it. So this is a great way to keep that information live and up to date. So one of the best things it did for us is it made marketing easy. This is our DSS group. I'm gonna let Marcy play that video real quick just because it's fun.
Get on board in Burke County.
So again, this is our DSS group. It really became a movement once they realized that these tools were available to them. They could sit in their office and train their clients to know how to get to their agencies or to get to the services, the Christian ministries, whatever it is their clientele needed. They now had the ability to train and teach themselves from anywhere, even if they were on their cell phone out in the field. We were able to build this travel training network that came with measurable outcomes. So we were part of a group that we were trying to apply for a grant. And one of the expectations of the grant was that we need a measurable outcome. How are you going to measure your outreach for this route if we're going to provide funds for it? And how we did that is we kept track of who trained and where. That's why you want to build that network, because now you have a full list of your outreach emails, the attendees, the tickets you gave out for that. This is all information that's crucial when applying for grants. And the picture you're looking at now is actually our transit planners from the Western Piedmont Council of Governments holding the award they won for the Burke Flex route in mobility. Okay, I do want to mention that. Thank you, Marcy, for going back there. We are also able to build our website through National RTAP. At mygreenway.org, we are hosted now, and before, I feel like Marcy, I think you would agree with me, our website was a little 90s, just a little. And with RTAP's help, we were able to bring us into the 21st century, and now it's fully accessible with the bus stop finder. So I want to give everyone that's on this webinar tools in one place that I wish I'd had when I first started. First thing is Easter Seals Project Action, become a certified travel trainer. This is a fantastic program. If you can't do that first, I want to mention that NADAC, National Aging and Disability Transportation Center, same that are promoting us today, will be offering a promising practices using 5310 funding. 5310 has so much to do with travel training. Check it out, please. That's a great resource that is at no cost to you. The last I want to highlight, while all of these resources were great for me.
Excuse
Sorry.
me, I think we put in the chat the
Oh,
link
yeah.
to sign up for that training.
Yeah, Carrie's listed in the chat. So anybody that wants it has it right there. All right, the last thing I want to mention, and when I came to Marcy through National RTAP, I was brand new to public transit and I had very little Excel knowledge. I am a people person. I have no problem being the face of an agency, but data and numbers, I wouldn't say is my strong suit. She made this process easy, and the GTFS builder gave us the option to own our data. And I cannot explain to you how precious that is. Being able to manipulate and change your data. If you have someone trained in your agency, they can do it in 30 minutes or less. It is, once you learn the process, it is very easy, and they have a full course through how to work through that. And I'm sure Marcy will go into that more. We also have the marketing toolkit at RTAP that I strongly suggest. We have a sample brochure. We're not going to show that now, but you have the option to check that out later. But there are so many resources right there for you. We want to build a better resource list for our ridership. So we've included some unique ability resources that are dedicated just to your ridership. But what resources do you know about? How can we improve this slide? This is your opportunity. Feel free to send us some resources that we can update.
And maybe put it in Q&A. Carrie is right. We might get lost in the chat. But the idea that here are samples, we're encouraging the conversation. And this is some that we found help us with training on the technology side so that travel training is a little easier with this specific content of trip planning.
That wraps up mine portion of the presentation. I'm gonna hand this over to Marcy. And Marcy, I want you to tell us, where does this data come from and what's your experience with it briefly?
Thank you, Amelia. We are thrilled to share with you today the possibility that this data, and as Amelia said, it's in Excel spreadsheets. Maybe you've never used Excel in this way. We will walk you through it, and we're excited to say it's as easy as rows and columns in 2 different Excel files. And the center of our display here is the latitude and longitude. And you can do this from your desk. You can go out in the field, but from your desk, we have tools where you're putting a pin on the map and building your database of where the bus stops are. Ideally, a transit system already has this information. I think Amelia went to the regional planners, got a list. It was a little out of date. You can spend some time working on that or just move this issue forward because you know where these bus stops are, or at least you will find it as you build the data. In 2021, just in the last couple of weeks, we've updated our toolkit. That's the same functionality. We've just hit reboot and added some simple videos with a guidebook. And anyone who's interested in taking forward this project will just walk through the rows and columns in the tabs in the Excel workbook. And the link to GTFS Builder is here.
I do want to add to Marcy, because I was privileged enough to actually help. I got to help Marcy review this just to see, from a transit provider's perspective, we all have busy days. We all have a dozen other responsibilities. She's really worked hard to make this guidebook easy where you can check off things as you go. And you also have an idea of how long this task should take you to help manage time. This is a great resource, and it's a wonderful guidebook as you build your own GTFS. And I cannot stress enough, anybody can do this. If you can type, you can make your own GTFS.
Thank you, Amelia. I think in the beginning, we see big words, specification. We think we need a programmer and a whole nother department in our organization. And Amelia was the entire department related to GTFS. And because it's in Excel, she could pass it to someone else who can then take forward this same data and manage it. We do ask that you have Google Earth, the desktop version, loaded on the computer that you work with. So it's Excel plus the Google Earth. How can I offer digital trip planning? Because the whole goal here today is to not just talk theoretically about New York or Montana, where they have digital trip planning, but your community. You can partner, just as Amelia did on behalf of her agency. You can step up and work with your local agency and say, I'll learn Excel if I didn't know it before. I'll learn how to type if I didn't know it before. Of course you do. And now build the GTFS files for your local community. And then it gets added into the network. So those interagency trips are no longer, oh, I can really help you travel train to the boundary that I offer. But now you're going to have to call the travel trainer next door north, and then you're going to have to call the travel trainer south, and then eventually you'll have enough travel training information to build the trip that you need to go. So as you can see, once the standardized data that Amelia talked about goes live, that rider is going to have a chance to go anywhere they want to go, and the data will be kept up to date. My most recent transit trip identified a large transit system that had a sign in front of me that said, if you want a printed schedule, get on the phone, give me a call, I'll mail that to you. But there are no longer touching and no longer available printed schedules. Many agencies are going digital only. So you can help bring your agency forward by taking charge of the GTFS. The future of GTFS, some additional function that Amelia mentioned, includes real-time information. We know riders are expecting that every bus has a GPS locator. I'll know whether the bus is late or early. It's possible the technology is there, it's just a budget. And so until then, at least let's publish the scheduled data. The next feature for this workaround that Amelia talked about, agencies that offer only on-demand services for the general public can display with GTFS if they use the workaround from National RTAP until a full functioning GTFS Flex is available. So we showed you one example where the rider is given a big warning, call for a pickup, and then they'll get their door-to-door service just as they do today. During COVID, and as we're navigating back into what is safe and what is possible, riders might be told you have to wait for the next bus. So wouldn't it be nice that our digital data would show this bus is filling up, this bus is full, and there are sensors that they can put on the bus, and the GTFS data can consume and use that. And actually, in some cases, when I've been playing with my GTFS data and trip planner, I've noticed it's asking me, is this bus full? Is this bus empty? So on your Apple Map or City Mapper or Transit app, you can start giving some feedback so riders will know, gee, I might want to plan one bus earlier because that bus might be filling up. And every day I'm going to be left stranded at my bus stop because they just legally and safely can't transport me. I think that's about all that we wanted to highlight. We encourage you to play with this data, right, Amelia? We find some new feature that we didn't see 24 hours ago when we did our last practice session. And so this is not static. The whole idea is it's dynamic. And Carrie, if you wouldn't mind opening up for questions or maybe using the raise hands and join us here.
Sure. Thank you so much. That was a great, very practical advice on using the travel training and using those features. And then we had one person comment that they were trying to use their Google Map and they clicked on the bus icon and nothing came up. And so then Marcy, you talked about why that would be. So what would you suggest for that person to do?
You will need to partner with that local agency. You can't just go in and make Excel spreadsheets on your own and then publish your personal version of that community's data. The transit agency will be your partner. You will be the conduit and the worker bee to say, we can no longer live without this data. And it's a no-cost agreement with Google, so zero fee there. If you're willing to put the schedule data in, I'm willing to help you. And then once you've clicked through an agreement with Google, there's a test environment that the agency would go through, and maybe you'd help them with the testing. And then once we agree the data is accurate, you publish the data for the ridership, the public. In fact, there's actually one more step. The team at Google doesn't want to publish your data until they've reviewed it. So that takes a step, and Amelia will remember this. If a bus stop name was on one printed schedule and one website page one way and another way on a different page, but it's the same stop, you have to start making your data more consistent. So all of that happens in the background. Your data goes live. The rider gets the best experience. Everything they see connects back to the website. And a very long answer to, you can make this happen. Work in partnership with your local agency, and we're here to support you with the tools from GTFS Builder. And the link that we showed you is right here at National RTAP.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Marcy. And the tools that National RTAP puts forward are really practical and really easy for systems of any size to use. So thank you very much for that. We have somebody who was unable to calculate transit directions by bus from their home to work, but it gives them directions if they reverse it. Do you have any idea why that would be?
I have had that happen. I don't know if I can exactly demonstrate it. I don't want to get too distracted with the mapping. It's a very good question. Sometimes, on some occasions, you just have to keep flipping it. There's a learning experience. We've heard of AI. The trip planner, if you try it once or twice, might work better. Sometimes moving the dot as to where the bus stop is may also turn on that feature. It's not logical that there wouldn't be a bus stop on the return trip, but humans make errors. And I have sometimes had, building my GTFS data, say I can go all the way to the transit center, and then I have to go one stop away because I didn't build my data to show that final stop. And I may not be describing it right, but it might be just a data error. I encourage you to reach out to me because I love those kind of mysteries. And if Amelia could sit with me 24/7, she would. Email me that sample trip. I'll help identify what the little glitch is. And then we can go back to them and encourage them to fix their data error in the GTFS. So here's our contact information when you're ready to send us that. So Carrie, perfect question. Bring it on.
Thank you very much. Amelia, when you were discussing the Google Maps, you talked briefly about screen reader accessible and then your screen froze a little bit. Is it fully screen reader accessible? Have you used that with somebody who's using a screen reader? And you'll want to unmute.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, I actually have. We have trained both with the North Carolina School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing when they had different accessibility options, but also with the NC Blind group. Can't think of the name of it right now, but we have utilized screen readers that read the entire app out. Now, they also have options in there where they can speed it up. A lot of times that's the main reason, the main way they accept information from their phones. But yeah, that is fully accessible. And you can even check that through the accessibility on your personal phone.
And I'm not with the years of experience that Amelia has, but I've had some people say the transit app will read me each of the stops at a volume that I can hear so that it's working better for me. And I'm not promoting one app or another, but many of these, either screen reader or audio, are offering features, and you'll just get a chance to work with your community and see what's best for that individual, as you always do, personalized travel training.
Somebody asked, what's the best way to connect these apps? Do you want it on your desktop or the app yourself? What have you found is the best interface for these maps?
Amelia, do you want to, you're younger and more savvy. How do you want to connect all of this?
Honestly, for travel training purposes, I found that it was easiest if I'm training a large group to pull up the browser, just pull up Google Maps on a browser on a computer connected to a projector. If I am teaching an individual, it's best to teach them from their personal device. Now, if you are building the GTFS builder, that is all through your desktop Excel and through different web links. And Marcy can go through that in more detail if you are interested in creating your own GTFS feed. But if you're training from an existing GTFS feed, I would use a browser, especially with Google Maps, as most people are familiar with it.
And sometimes you'll be in an Explorer or Edge or whatever their new name is, and Google Maps is gonna maybe not work as well as it should. So you might want to use Firefox or Chrome or some of the other browsers. Safari seems quite friendly, but important that you don't find yourself frustrated by a little hiccup there.
Mhm. So while we're talking about travel training, Amelia, this I think would be for you. We have people that aren't particularly comfortable with technology. People maybe not have their own personal phone, or are using kind of a basic one, or are just not familiar with their own phone. How have you approached that as a travel trainer when you're trying to transition somebody onto digital apps?
So that's a really great question. And it is something that we didn't really mention in the slides, but I have found a lot of people who are hesitant with technology, that projector, showing them on a big screen, showing them where to go, giving them a roadmap, which is why we included the slides that you have in this deck, so that you can go back and give them printed material. It really does help. But also, especially for someone, for example, my stepdad, he has a shake to his hands, he has a tremor, and he struggles to utilize a smartphone. So what we do is we turned on his talk to text and got him familiar with that. That does help a lot of people who are utilizing these apps, and Google Maps allows you to do that in their to and from section field. So I would familiarize them with talk to text, and suddenly you'll be getting text messages from everybody who was hesitant with technology. It may be comical at times, but it's a great resource. So that would be the main way to do it: printed materials and talk to text.
May I add, on occasion, that individual may be hesitant, but often they have a caregiver. They could be younger or older. And Amelia, has it been helpful to just say, you know, we need to slow this down. Why don't we take it in pieces? Why don't I show the caregiver some of the suggestions, just like you were talking about case managers, and then let that individual slowly get more familiar with what's available. They don't need a huge data plan, because sometimes they could download on Wi-Fi their specific trip and have it available captured. And so, yes, there may be some additional functions that we'll need when somebody said, I'm in a rural area, I really don't have cell service, I can't be flipping this trip backward and forward at any time of day. So sending that trip to your phone, then it would be captured without needing constant cellular service. So all good questions, Carrie.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great point, knowing that a lot of people in rural areas may have broadband when they start, or may have cell service when they start. They can download it offline and have it throughout the duration of their trip, because I know I've been in the middle of nowhere and lost connection and not knowing exactly where I was going to be going. So that's really great to know.
I even had an experience like that. I recently went to Philadelphia and I always make it a goal to ride public transit, as you can see my image, any city that I go to. So I was on the trolley underground in Philadelphia and completely lost cell phone service. And even I became hesitant, because now we have all these trolleys, all these routes. I'm not familiar. I don't know the directions. I don't know the city, and I don't have cell service. So I went upstairs and I downloaded the trip, put it on the screen, on the main screen of my phone. So basically I could have the full accessibility of my Google Maps trip without having to have actual cell phone service. So that really did help a lot. And that is in those options where we showed send that trip plan to your phone. It's right there on Google Maps where you can do that.
And I think Amelia, when she was telling me the story before, she was ready to say, not going to happen. I can't get where I want to go.
Even I really did. I told my partner, I said, I don't think we can do this. I don't know where to go. And he goes, really? You? And But no, that was, everybody experiences that hesitation and that fear. And when you're in an unfamiliar city, especially your ridership. So I think it's really important to make sure that we show them that you have the tool to download anything you need. And with a little bit of patience, you can have the courage to go anywhere you want on transit.
There was one more footnote to that trip experience. We, or sometimes we'll go to the agency's website and try to use the app available for the mazillions dollars that was used to hire a company to give them a trip planner. And sometimes it hits a hiccup. And we think, okay, I'm not going to be able to plan the trip today. I'll wait till the office is open on Monday morning, give them a call. Well, there's a back door. And all of these apps that we said that are on that TriMet website, you'll be able to find them. They're in the App Store. Play with those. They have a lot of great features about downloading the schedule, downloading a trip, being able to hear it. And again, Amelia was successful in being able to get where she needed to go. She just had to use her mind in a new creative way, saying, is there another app that I can use? The first one I tried didn't quite work for me today. And that may also be part of your travel training.
Mhm. So we had mentioned before, but all of these materials are going to be on both of the NADTC and National RTAP website as PowerPoint. So you can take that and use that in your training. There's another question here for Amelia related to travel training. What do you think of travel training videos? Because when COVID came on board, came about, people abandoned the face-to-face training, and we're getting some training in the form of video. What are your thoughts on video training?
I think that is a fantastic asset, and it is really important to make sure you mention and show how to use the tools to adapt the trip to them individually. I think video resources are wonderful and we should all encourage them, but also think about hosting a Zoom meeting for your groups. You could use the same video software, but have the live discussion that can be helpful as well. So I commend you on that. I'm excited. I hope we get to see your videos and can share them across in transit.
And we had another question for Marcy. What about adding fares to these trip planning? The agency has a zone system. How hard is it to add that kind of data?
A really good question. And Amelia and I were talking about how sometimes knowing what it's going to cost is a reason why someone said, not interested, I don't want to travel. So zones and fares are not difficult. You just have to say from this bus stop to that bus stop. And then that list of bus stops, that one sample we showed you about data, you're identifying where the zone is. And then you say the fare is $1 within the zone, $2 when you go out of the zone. Very possible. Fares are optional. So here's another thing as a travel trainer. You might be able to say they have GTFS, but they haven't added the layer for fares. You could become the advocate to say, I'll help, we'll test it. If it works, we'll keep it. If it doesn't work, we'll fix it. And then the fares could display. And the only reason we could show a 3-agency fare for that $2 was because each agency published their fare, including the annotation that they are 0 fare right now during COVID. So thank you for that question about fares. It will take a barrier away, and it is not going to include youth fare, person with a unique need, the monthly ticket. All of that's under the link that'll say ticket information. We're just going to build the zone fare for a one-way adult and then let it flow through to multiple agencies as that trip gets knitted together. Thank you for that question.
Yes, and thank you. In other words, Marcy can help you with that. One last question real quickly. We have a minute left. Recommended app for a small rural town, low technology.
So I've got this one. All right. That is such a great question. One of the barriers when I started as a mobility manager, it was a brand new role to our agency. We had no idea or concept what this should look like. And the first thing I encountered was, oh my gosh, how do I train these people how to use this system? It was a struggle. we had no funding for any kind of tech at that time. And through National RTAP, I met Marcy and she worked with me. So National RTAP's GTFS builder is the place to start if you do not have a fund for transit. That is the best place to start. You will own your data. You will be able to change it. It is yours and you built it yourself. So no one will be able to take it away if you decide to not be a part of their program at any time. But in addition to that, it will give you understanding of what this means. And Marcy and I were just talking about that before we started the webinar. The skills that I learned from building our GTFS feed helped us when we did decide we wanted a real-time data app for our transit agency. And we only have, at that time, we only have 6 routes now in one county and 2 in another. Fixed, the rest is on-demand services. But we were able to really understand what we were looking for our small agency with such a broad area to cover. So build it yourself first. You'll learn the skills to find the software that you want to purchase later on.
What
Thank
was
you.
the message? Build it and they will come, something about baseball? And
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Marcy and Amelia, for sharing this experience with you. Once again, NADTC and National RTAP, thank you for joining us. And all the materials will be posted on the website. Thanks
Is
so
there-
much and have a good afternoon. Yes, Marcy?
Is there a survey, Carrie?
Yes, there will be a survey link when you, thank you for that. There's one in the chat, but also when you leave there, you should get that as well in the follow-up. So appreciate your time today. Have a good afternoon.